This is where the fun begins.
True.
Space Arena.
Grand Arena.
SAGA Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Space Arena Ground Arena, where we cover Star Wars Unlimited from the ground up into space. I'm BananaCrapshoot, and here with me, as usual, is Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. We don't see each other enough. We've been too busy lately.
Yeah, real life, both work full time, have kids. It takes up a lot of our time, but the time we do get to spend together, I do cherish. Mr. Ben,
Absolutely.
kind of like Anakin cherishes Padme, So
That has sort of like a dark subtext to it. Like,
yeah,
perhaps I'm glad there are so many miles between us.
yeah. Got a few things we want to hit on tonight. But first, what have you been up to? What have you been playing? What's going on in the game space for Mr. Ben?
So, I don't know if we've talked about deck building games on this show before. But if we have, I may have said some somewhat negative things. Deck builders in general are not my favorite way to play. I've played a ton of them. I've had a lot of fun playing them, but it's not my favorite. Like, it's a thing. Hey, we'll play Legendary, but I'd rather play something where I get to beat my friends up. So, but anyway, the deck builder concept. I have been introduced to one that kind of turns some of the fundamentals of things that annoy me about deck builders in general on its head. And technically, it's not really a deck builder. It's this new Invincible bag building game, and it takes like you're able to play cards out of your hand, and then what you actually build is the bag that is like the currency you use to pay for your abilities. So that like annoying thing where both me and you want to buy the same card, that never happens. And I find the deletion of that element of the deck building to make the cooperative experience, like now it's actually cooperative. It's not semi co-op. And me and Wit have been playing a lot of that lately. It's a good one. And of course I'm a sucker for the branding. I'm a huge Invincible fan too, but it's cool to have found a deck building style game that really. So I've been playing a ton of that, and we also recently did a store showdown, me and the boy. But I'll get to that here in a minute. What have you been playing, man?
Star Wars Unlimited. There is a new game that was revealed recently, a new trading card game that did pique my interest.
Altered?
No, it's not altered.
Okay.
It's it's another Bandai card game. It's gonna be like their 7th card game. Is the Gundam card game. I don't know if you've seen anything about the cards that I've seen so far. Look gorgeous.
They do make the cards look pretty.
It's Bandai, so I'm like, you know what I mean? Like even more so than like with FFG. Like it's like, all right, I know, like I've been down the road with Dragon Ball card game, right? Like I played that. I've been down the road with played Digimon a little bit. I've seen, One Piece and now Fusion World and Battle Spirits and then Union Arena, right? So now they're gonna have another one, but if you haven't seen it, it uses like the One Piece resource system where you get like another one every turn. It's kind of like the mana crystals, like Hearthstone. You get one every
I do
turn.
like that mana system.
And then they have it. Your cards have a level, but instead of them being like in Digimon where you could like level up the card, and it's a little different than Battle Spirits too. That also has like different levels where the level is like how many resources you need to have in play to play it, and then there's a cost, and those are like the amount of resources you have to exhaust to play. So it kind of plays with the level and the resources, and like big mechs are cool. So I'm intrigued. I'm gonna try to get my hand on one of those beta sets that has like 9 boosters in it or whatever that you can get early in February. So we'll see. That has my interest peaked. Other
Would
than
you
that,
make sure your
so
glasses prescription is up to date so you'll be able to
hmm
read the cards, knowing
hmm
Bandai games?
yeah, the
A lot of
walls of
words
card
on
text.
those cards usually.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, but other than that, just Star Wars Unlimited. Um, I don't know if I'll. I haven't, like I said, the only PQs we talked about this last time. I won't be able to hit. I don't know if I'll be able to hit any store showdowns either this set because just with the kids and football and stuff, I just don't know if I can make it work. So more of a casual Star Wars Unlimited player at the moment, but still having fun with a few decks and still trying to find new stuff that's fun. So it's like a deck I've been playing recently that's a lot of fun is the Mandalorian in aggression, and going cheap and wide and can go tall too with the upgrades. So and it does have surprisingly a decent amount of answers for other things in the meta. Sabine and Boba Fett, especially with Ketsu, and then with Mandalorian's ability to exhaust cards when playing upgrades, you can kind of keep them on ice even if they're upgraded uh, with pesky upgrades. So it is pretty solid. It's been fun. Anything else before we move on?
No, I think we can dive into this store showdown that I wanna talk about. So there's more than just a tournament report I want to kind of touch on here. So this was the first event that my local store was doing where they were using the Melee GG system.
Hmm.
Uh, and there were some upsides, like my kid had a bunch of problems getting logged in, and I emailed the help or whatever. Sure, nobody was going to get back to me until Monday, and they got right back, like on a Saturday morning, to get his password recovery or whatever it was that we needed. I don't remember exactly. Um, but it was a thing. There was a few like older guys, and our store does tend to be like an older cohort. And there was a couple of the younger guys who were going around just helping these older dudes get their accounts set up. And I don't know, I get that once we do it, it's done, and you have to have an account somewhere. But man, it felt like it could have been easier. Like there was a bunch of friction points. So that was kind of mixed reviews on the whole melee setup. We got into playing. Now, I initially, I guess I got to go back again. My store owner initially called me and was like, "Hey man, do you want to play in this one or do you want to stream it?" And I was like, "I 100% want to stream it. That's so much fun for me. I'm arguably more into that than I love playing, but I love watching and talking about the plays." I said, "That's what I want to do." So the week of the event, he calls me up and he's like, "All right, man, in Melee, I have like 3 people signed up or 5 people, whatever it was. I want to make sure we get enough people that the event fires. Would you be willing to play if we need you?" And I was like, "Sure, man. I'll just commit to playing." Like I'm not good with like last minute change of plans. So I said, "Let's just jettison the stream. I'll make sure I play that way the event fires." Now, ultimately, there was plenty of people to where I could have done the stream if I wanted to. So I don't know if the like low sign up numbers is just people being people, if it's some of the folks literally couldn't figure out melee until they got to the store and had someone walk them through it. I don't know exactly what the explanation was there, but it was a little worrying to me that a showdown had 5 people signed up, the week of.
Hmm.
So I have been I've been playing around with the extremely fun no unit deck. I've been trying a bunch of different combinations of not putting any units into my deck at all and just doing the kind of like Bruce Lee, Jeet Kune Do, blocking everything you try to do to me until you have no cards left in your deck kind of thing, which I'm sure people really appreciate on Karabast. Um, but so that's the deck that I brought, and I committed with the mindset of if this goes to time, it goes to time. I'm playing a deck that's a little bit slower. I understand that. I'm playing a deck that presents my opponents with a ton of really irritating choices. People play slow when that happens, and I just, in my head, I committed that I was not going to get tilted about anybody, no matter what the play pattern was. So I get there for my first round, and they call time to get started, and my opponent is literally in the bathroom, and I'm like, this is this is not where I want to be. Now he ended up being a totally cool dude. I I don't want to throw shade at the guy, but just that kind of set, all my matches went to time. Like multiple matches were 1-1 at the end, and I really don't like this double loss thing. But even more than that, I feel like we need to normalize everybody just do the double loss. I don't like this like social pressure of like who's gonna concede? Is it gonna be you? Oh, I don't want. Should we roll it? Like I don't like any of that. I just want it to be a thing. Like if it goes to time, it should just be a thing, and we should all just kind of get on board with that. Unfortunately, I was 2-2, and we got to the last round, and I got a call from my wife that my basement was flooded. So
Oh no.
I went up to my son and I'm like, "Hey man, would it be okay with you if you took off?" And he's like, I'm 2-2 for the day. I was like, "Oh, fine, fine." So Wit just brought his same Boba Fett deck. He had a bunch of fun. Was just kind of there playing for packs. He hadn't really planned on playing until he doesn't like to play if I'm not playing. If I'm streaming, he would rather stay home. Um, so he kind of last minute jumped in as well. But we both ended up having a great time overall for the day. Um, a little bit of grinding of gears with melee. And again, I don't want to say that that's like, oh my gosh, this is a problem. It could just be growing pains. So I don't want to come down overly negative. And as far as the event, I thought it was really well run. I had fun against all my opponents. I didn't have any problems with anybody all day. But man, it does feel a little frustrating that if you want to play a control style in this game, you have this extra thing you have to deal with, which is the like politics of how to handle the double loss. And that's not super fun. I wish we would have that needs to be locked down and codified in a way that it doesn't put players in this like awkward like who's going to concede situation. I don't dig that at all. So overall positives for the day, but a few things that I think we could keep an eye on or do better next time, or room for improvement.
Got it. What what were the issues people had with Melee? Like getting their FFG account linked?
Yes. Multiple people, and I myself, I consider myself to be a pretty tech savvy guy. And from my phone, I could not figure out where Melee wanted my FFG number. I ended up hopping on my laptop and then I found it easily with no problems. Um, and I don't know if that's specific to like how I have the web browser configured on, sometimes things on a mobile display don't display right. Could have been a me
Mhm.
problem. And again, most of the guys that I saw that were having issues with it tended to be older guys. And, I'm not trying to come down on Melee. I'm just saying this is what I observed. You know what I mean?
Other than the issues signing up, the Melee software itself. Any feedback on that?
So I saw people using it all day to check their matches, to report matches. And maybe this is going to make me sound like a boomer, but I just looked at the paper that the guy printed off for my matches. And then I went up to the my store owner and said, "Hey, this is my result," when I had a result to turn in. So I didn't engage with it on the day of, but lots of people I saw doing it, and at that point, I didn't hear anybody complaining. It was just that initial like getting set up, and maybe some of that was just like, things that are new are annoying energy. That could have been some of. I mean, I
Oh,
guess it remains to be seen how smooth will like check-in and stuff be at the next event once the accounts are established. And if that goes smoothly, well then okay, like everything has growing pains. I can understand that. If there's gear grinding at the next event, that's when I'm going to be like, okay, well where's the problem here? You know what I mean?
talking about the double loss thing, is your issue the double loss itself, or just how the community so far has engaged with the concept and the implementation of the double loss?
Uh I don't like I like the idea of outside of Top Cut. I'm talking about Swiss. Obviously in Top Cut you have to have a clear winner. That's
Hmm.
non-negotiable. Uh, so in my head, I'm thinking about all the different variables at the same time. So I understand as a TO and as like people, tournaments have to be able to run within expected guidelines. A little bit of overrun here, like things happen, we get it. But like if the event is supposed to be from 9 to 6 and you're still there at midnight, that's not okay. So untimed rounds, like unlimited amount of time, all it takes is one person who's super slow, and we've had versus events where we've literally been kicked out of the convention hall and had to finish the event in a hotel lobby because there wasn't anywhere else to play it, and this just was taking so long. So we don't want that. So there has to be time limits. There should be clear end of match procedure. Personally, I think it would be okay to have draws, but I get that some people don't like that because that can lead to like sandbagging, like, oh, me and you were teammates. I have a great record. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw to you, or we can do an intentional draw to help both of us above somebody else and that kind of collusion stuff. Like that's not cool either. So I get why they want to go to this. I think the thing that bugs me about it is now here it is. There's like game one ends at 25 minutes. Game two, about two-thirds of the way through, starts to go real slow. And then all of a sudden, here we are 1-1, and there's like 3 minutes left. And somebody's like, well, you want to roll a die? Okay, well, I mean, this is the game. I'm going to have initiative going. I'm going to be going first in this game. I'm favored in that situation. No, I don't want to roll a die. Like, I don't want to have any of that conversation. I don't want, like, I just feel like as far as I understand it in the rules, when time is called, like it's just a double loss if you don't have a clear resolution. Um, but the way that at least at multiple stores, multiple events I've been to, the way that it ends up being handled is people kind of have this. Well, should we flip a coin? Should we, come on, man? You know, there's this like weird social interaction where nobody wants to concede, nobody wants to flip a coin, but we have to do something. Um, I don't know. Maybe this is a me problem. Maybe what I just need to go is, nope, the rules say it's a double loss and move on and not think about it further. But I don't like that moment. That moment, or maybe what I need to do is play aggro decks and then I don't end up going to time. Maybe that's the solution.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't been in that scenario yet where I've even played on like slower decks a few times at some events, and I don't know. Just I haven't been in that situation yet.
And this will certainly, of course, I would say this. You know, of course, I'm biased in my own favor, but I do find that like when I'm putting in my reps with a slow control deck, I'm making my plays super quick, and I'm putting my opponent in situations where they take 30 seconds to resolve a Power of the Dark Side, or 30 seconds to resolve I Am Your Father. And like I get it, these decisions are hard and I want them to be hard. Like I'm deliberately trying to use cognitive load against my opponent as a weapon. So I understand that they want to take time to make these choices, but like it is frustrating to just watch the clock just drain away. And it's like, come on, man, let's go.
Yeah.
um, and at the end of it, you know, like I said, going into this event, I understand that playing a slower deck, I knew this was going to be a thing that came up. And it wasn't the double loss that kind of bugged me at the end of the day. It was that awkward conversation part of it. So I guess I could just say up front, like, hey man, if we go to time, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to take what the rules say, and that's a double loss. I know it sucks, but I don't want to have that conversation. You know, maybe that's the solution. Uh, but I don't know. I feel like, isn't there a better way to do this? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't have a good solution. I know see Destiny was best of one, so he didn't really have, but if that went to time, there was like tiebreakers and it was like health remaining or damage dealt or something. I forget exactly, but there was, tiebreakers, but I guess like if you have 2 minutes to play your third match, like
Aggro deck wins.
aggro deck wins, yeah.
First hit wins essentially, which sucks if you're the guy on the control deck, but at least then it's a definitive end. And that avoids this whole thing that I kind of found. Like I didn't mind losing the games. I just didn't like that. And I don't want it to come off like any of my opponents were like pressuring me or doing anything like uncool. That's not the case at all. I don't think any of my opponents were. I had a great time with everybody I played. I just didn't care for that moment. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you would hope, I guess, that people play faster, right? That you can, I guess, in my mind, that's what that double loss is trying to incentivize people is like not to slow play. And I'm not saying your opponents were slow playing, but I'm sure they were taking longer on their turns than you were.
Well, and sometimes I'll chit chat with people. Like if it's a casual game, I talk a lot. So, maybe some of that bleeds over. Generally in competitive settings, I try to keep the chit chat to a minimum and like play quick, but I'm not perfect either. I'm sure I've had matches where people would like, dude, why were you playing so slow? Um, but it just after after going to time like every round, I don't want to do that anymore again. Like that's not where I want to be. Uh, Although, as we've been discussing it here on the show, I think I'm reaching the conclusion that I'm just going to avoid that whole conversation from now on and just say, hey, it is what it is. If we go to time, double loss, I'm walking away from the table. I don't want to talk about it.
I think that's probably the right approach. Until FFG changes something.
Yeah.
And FFG has been like responsive and changing some things. So I mean, maybe that's something they look at now that PQs are starting to fire. If that becomes an issue.
I suppose to that end, we offered some criticism with regard to the PQ pricing. I mean, not nearly as much or as sharp as some other corners of the internet criticized this, but I think given that we did offer some criticism for it. I think pointing out that FFG was like, "Hey guys, we heard," and they have concrete steps for how they're going to try to do better pricing going forward. I think that's cool. I want that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and they did extend the current pricing for the season too, with like the cards or whatever, right? The top 64 or something. I think
I think that's the best part of it
get a
is
card.
that the participation card there's actually enough for the people who participate. Like
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. One more thing about your store showdown. How's your basement? You get that
Tree
squared
roots
away.
every couple of years. It we were due. There's there's some tree roots out there that we have to get
Oh,
augered out.
got it.
So it had probably been 3 years since the last time, so we were more than due. Uh, but yeah, I didn't appreciate having to pay double time because it was a Saturday. But
Mm. y-
you got to be able to use the bathroom.
Yep, I
Like, don't
get
have
it.
a lot of choice in the matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, all's well that ends well, I suppose.
You have anything else about your showdown you want to hit?
I think that sums it up. Shout out to Geek City Games in North Liberty, Iowa. They always run a great run a great event, and there was a bunch of guys that came down from Cedar Rapids, or I guess I don't know how many. There were at least two that I talked to, so that was cool to meet some new players.
You been seeing any of those old versus people um at your events from the versus community?
No, not really. Uh, the I think the thing with versus being an LCG, there's only it's like a Venn diagram rather than a circle. There's
Mm-hmm.
some people who like versus brought in board game people who wouldn't play a TCG into a TCG kind of game, uh, but they're not going to follow me to Star Wars. I mean, of course, my core game group we're all playing Star Wars, but yeah, some of the guys that I just knew through, at least in my local scene, the guys that I knew through versus have I don't think any of them have picked up Star Wars. I know some other guys in the community at large, like Team Apex. I think all those guys are playing, which is cool.
I was just curious since the announcement um that they're not going to be doing organized play anymore. If more people were gonna.
Yeah, I think we're all in various stages of grief with regard to that in the versus
Yeah,
community. That was a blow.
I'm going through it
But
myself, man. I'm going through it myself.
nine
Not
years is it's a good run for a card game.
yeah.
Not all card games get 9 years.
I don't have near
And
the
technically, they
investment.
haven't said that they're ending the game. They've just said
Right,
they're ending organized play. So
right.
potentially it could still live on in a kitchen table format where we can get expansions. And, I mean, the last year or so, I've almost exclusively played with my kid at home anyway. So that almost doesn't affect me. I'm not going to say that, but in terms of like, I haven't tournament prepped for a versus event since I think midwinter 23 maybe. Like it's been a while. But it just is what it is, man. You got to be happy because it happened,
Yep.
uh, not sad because it's over. That's the approach. Speaking of bright, shiny new things though that aren't ending, you want to talk about some new cards?
Sure. You want to talk about the Brooklyn box or whatever, the Protectors of New York? Is that what you want to talk about? That's not what
The
you want to talk about.
I don't
What's that?
know. I'm not sure I know which card you're talking about.
The new Versus box. The with like the triple mantle Spider
Oh,
Man.
okay. That I was trying to think of Star Wars cards.
Oh
That's where
yeah,
you
yeah.
lost me. I
Sorry.
was trying to segue back to the the show
The
we're on.
yeah.
Yes, that last if the Protectors of New York is the last expansion we ever get for Versus, man, they went out on a high note. They went out on a banger. So
It's a
can't
good box.
complain about that.
It's a good box.
It's fantastic. I mean, I guess unless you enjoy fair cards, that's then it's probably annoying.
All right, which all right, back to Star Wars Unlimited.
Okay.
How many cards you want to pick? Two, three?
I think I have three saved into my little folder here, and then I want to talk about the exploit mechanic
Okay.
as well a little bit.
Okay.
But all right, I'll kick this off with an event. I don't play units anymore in my decks. A
Insane.
fine addition, and unfortunately, this event, I can just already see how cool it's going to be to have six entrenched in my deck. So this is a vigilance villainy event. If an enemy unit was defeated this phase, play an upgrade from your hand or from any player's discard pile, ignoring its aspect penalty. Now I admit sometimes my opponents play cool things that I would love to steal, but I don't put cards in my deck on the off chance that my opponent is going to play ball. So I don't really care that this gives me the ability to steal something from somebody else's uh, discard pile. Yeah, maybe I will sometime, but what this is three more copies of Entrenched, three more copies of Frozen and Carbonite. Wait, that's what this is to me. This is I get to play the Super Laser Blast, kill all your stuff that I've had entrenched since turn one, and then you have your follow up play, and I throw this thing down and entrench whatever that follow up play is. It's gonna be awesome. People are gonna hate it. I love this card.
Yeah. The six entrenched just seems ridiculous to me. Like, oh my gosh. Like blue decks are already, I mean, they're the most annoying to play against, right? And then
True.
uh I think this will be awesome in Twin Suns, right? That wording any player's discard pile. So like in Twin Suns, this will be fun too. I think it's a cool event. And the fact that it costs zero is pretty nuts, but it does have the caveat that you have to have defeated a unit. So, um, but yeah, I think it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I don't think that's the end of the world. I can't wait until I play some kind of thing that defeats a unit, and then I just grab the upgrade that was on that unit and like throw it onto whatever their new fatty was. Like, oh, you thought you were really getting the better of me with my power of the dark side when you defeated your entrenched guy, huh? Cool.
Hmm.
Thank you. I didn't have another entrenched in my hand, but now I do. It's gonna be gross. I love it. I love every part of it. I like the art. I can even reading the card name, I can hear General Grievous
I
like
can hear
saying
it.
it, Like so every inch of it hits the fanboy sweet spot for me. It is gonna fit into the kind of cards I like playing already. Yeah, man. I'm with this one. I'm super hype on this card.
That's one point I was gonna make. Is yeah, you can definitely hear the card. Yeah. All right. So, what I'm excited about is a leader. Um, so we got the Muppet himself, Yoda. So Yoda's a vigilance heroism leader. With an action, you exhaust him, and if a unit left play this phase, draw a card. Then put a card from your hand on the top of your or bottom of your deck. And then his epic action he deploys on 7, and he becomes a 4/9 with Restore 2. And when you deploy him, you can discard a card from your deck. If you do, you can defeat an enemy non-leader unit that costs the same as or less than the discarded card. So discarding a card from your deck is from the top of the deck, and with Yoda's frontside ability, to look at, draw a card, and then put a card from your, on the top or bottom, you can set that up with his action. I think the 4/9 stat line he's beefy. He's a beefy boy. The Restore 2 is nice, and his shtick of drawing cards, I think sets him up for like the first real hero controlled deck. I think is Yoda. Um, I think he's cool. I'm excited he's in the game. So that's the first one I wanted to talk about tonight was Yoda.
This is a heroic leader I might actually play. I I shouldn't say it like that. I mess around with all the leaders, but this is like a heroic leader that I'd be excited to play outside of like Han gimmicky stuff, and I love that front side power.
Yeah, being able to draw and then filter at the same time.
I, I suppose it is worth pointing out that it is asking somewhat a lot of you, depending upon how your deck is constructed, ensuring that a unit leaves play to be able to filter a card. Uh, there are going to be games where that's going to be tough to pull off, but I don't think it's going to be so tough that it's going to be inconsistent. I think most of the time you're going to be able to use this power when you want to use it, and then setting up a cool top deck Yoda flip that looks awesome. I like it. It essentially lets you have a removal when you flip over. It just requires you to be clever about it, and I like cards that reward clever play. So yeah, I'm into it.
You just said something um, that's pretty amazing. You called it the Yoda flip, um, which he did a lot of when he was fighting Dooku. So that made me happy. Um,
I also
he,
like the proportions on his lightsaber and the card art.
yeah,
Like it looks just right. I really like the art on this card.
yeah, I'm a big fan all around. I'm also liking the idea of like, okay, on 7, you deploy him and then you play a Jedi lightsaber on him, right? And now he's a 7/12. Um, that seems pretty crazy. Um, that's healing you. I think I'm gonna have fun with Yoda.
Yeah, he's a good one.
All right, you
All
got
right,
another one?
so yes, and am going to continue my theme of cards that are actually just three more copies of another card with Merciless Contest. Merciless Contest is a three cost villainy affiliated card that's event card that says each player chooses a non-leader unit they control, defeat those units. This is not exactly three more copies of the Power of the Dark Side, but it's kind of three more copies of Power of the Dark Side. This is great. It's
Hmm.
not being able to hit a leader is like that's a problem. Like that is a part of this removal tool that you have to pay attention to. Obviously, this is worded in such a way that it's a Twin Suns card at its heart, but in Premier format, this is still a three cost kill anything on the board. And if you're in a remove everything, keep the board small kind of mindset, this is a card that just says whatever one thing your opponent has developed this turn, they get the ability to kill it for you. Like I will grant you the ability to choose your own dude for death. Uh, I love it. I love these kinds of cards.
It is worth noting. It says each player chooses, so that includes you too. So, um,
Yeah, yeah. There
but
certainly can be situations with normal players where that can be a drawback. Again, I've been playing no unit decks for the past little bit, so to me that is irrelevant text. But yes, we should mention that.
I mean, in villainy, there's and if token units, if there's as many of them on the battlefield as I suspect there will be, I don't think this is going to be um, terrible for you if you're playing this in villainy.
I mean, it may turn out because I think you're correct that battlefields are going to be flooded with tokens. Uh, and I do want to talk about the arenas being flooded with tokens a little more in depth with this next last card that I have here. Uh, but if that ends up being the case, this and Power of the Dark Side might get a lot worse.
Hmm.
They're already Power of the Dark Side is already weaker than it once was because of things like Lurking Tie Phantom, which is just okay, that card straight up turns off that type of removal. And then if you add to it just flooding the arenas with tokens, well, now all of a sudden your opponent chooses any type of removal that says your opponent chooses is just trash. Like it might shake out that in the next meta, these cards aren't as good as they are currently. Uh, I hope that is not the case. I hope we do not enter flood the board with tokens and like trash units meta, but it might happen.
I think Token Rush could be a thing. Um, it's been a thing in other games, so I could see it being a thing here. But we'll get into that after we talk about your next card. I guess for my next card, I'm gonna stick. You're sticking with your theme. I'll stick with my theme. I got another leader. Um, so this time we have Anakin. So aggression, heroism. As an action, you exhaust them. They deal 2 damage to your base, and you get to attack with a unit. If it's attacking another unit, it gets +2 power for this attack. So you do 2 damage to your base, buff a unit if it's attacking a unit. I don't know if the +2, I'm not. We'll talk about it. We'll go over his other side and then we'll talk about it. He deploys on 6. When he deploys, he becomes a 4/7. And then he has Overwhelm, and he gets +1 attack power for every 5 damage on your base. So you're using his front side to damage your base along with your opponent. Doing damage to your base. So when you deploy him, you can Overwhelm and have a bunch of extra attack power, right? Having him be like a 7/7 with Overwhelm seems pretty crazy. Where I do struggle, he seems to me like he would want to be more of an aggro leader, but he deploys kind of late for an aggro leader, where he deploys on 6. And also his ability where your units only get the buff if they're attacking another unit makes it seem like he's supposed to be a mid-range leader because you're trying to, get better trades than your opponent. So I don't know where he fits, which is kind of why I wanted to talk about him, because to me, his unit side himself is very aggressive, but his front side is more mid-range. So I think he's in this weird spot where I don't know if he can break. I don't know if he can break into like the meta as a top tier in either of those facets. You know what I'm saying? So I was curious what your thoughts are.
I don't know if I look at this guy and see aggro. Um, Being able to attack with a unit with +2 attack, but that only triggers if it's going into another unit. So I look
Mm-hmm.
at that whole power as a removal tool, not
Right.
a end the game tool. Um, his flip side, I think you correctly observe deploying at 6 is a little late for an aggro hero. Plus, I think you want to get that big swing out of him where he has that extra 3 attack. So, or 4, I mean, potentially even 4 attack. So I look at him more as like a late game bomb and kind of boss monster. So I think the impulse to slot him into mid range feels more right to me than aggro. And potentially you even want to play him in such a way that you've got some healing going on so that you can take advantage of his front side without putting yourself into a dangerous space with regard to your life total, and then kind of as the game you hit the mid to later game, well then you maybe stop using that front power, and that's when he comes out and starts working on the board himself. Um, it's kind of a more interesting board centric leader than you look at Sabine and it's pretty obvious what she's supposed to do. I feel like this
Mm-hmm.
one presents a little bit more interesting of a puzzle because you can't be too capricious with your life total in a world where Kylo Ren and Han and Sabine and Leia, where all these other decks are flying around, like paying 2 life off your base to probably be able to remove a guy, uh, that adds up pretty quick. Plus, I mean, does your unit survive that exchange? So now you're paying a whole card plus life off your base to be able to clear one of your opponent's things. Like, I can see where maybe that math starts to not work out so well. So, yeah, this is an interesting leader. I don't know that it's going to be super meta impactful right out of the box, but I don't have a full scope of the card pool that he's going to be living in either. So, um,
Where I do
my
think he,
guess is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, where I do think he will do well is that pre-release weekend, where you're playing limited format, because being able to get a bigger swing out of your units and then get more damage out of him once he deploys. Um, I think he'll be a problem once he deploys in a limited format.
Yeah, I can see that. Having built-in combat tricks in limited feels on its face like it would be pretty strong.
All right, what else you got?
Okay, so the last card I wanted to talk about is a cunning event called Political Pressure. This is a one-cost event. You choose an opponent, and they have a choice. They can discard a random card. If they don't, you get 2 battle droids. So on its face, this is just like a cheaper Spark of Rebellion. It's not locked to heroes. It's a cheaper Bazine Natal. Uh, Random is a word I really like on discard effects that target my opponent. But I think a lot of people are going to opt for the battle droids, especially if it's like early in the game, like or in a situation where you don't have many cards in your hand. Like I can envision a lot of places where I have one extra resource on my turn, and hey, you gonna chuck a card from your hand that could maybe be the thing you want to play next turn? No, you can just have those battle droids. Now, on its face, this isn't crazy powerful, but you look at how many cards have the word exploit on them, and there's one world where we have like the board flood, the arenas are just stuffed with tokens left and right, and like there isn't enough removal. The card shortage has prevented there being enough removal cards even printed to deal with how many tokens we see. But the other world is where you don't even play mid-range units and you just play bombs with exploit and stuff like this, and it's lots of little weenies, and then bam, a, a big old heater, a 6 drop on 2 resources or 4 resources, or an 8 drop on 4 resources. uh, and I don't know what kind of meta this is going to create. This seems wild to me, man.
Yeah, I think if you look at droid deployment, there's a 2 cost card that creates 2 battle droid tokens. This one does it for 1, potentially, or this card's a random card for 1. I think this card's ridiculously good, no matter how you look at it. And with the amount of exploit, like at first, we saw exploit, we saw coordinate, we didn't know how good they were going to be. And I think I said that they've so far supported all the new stuff they've done in the one additional set we've had, that I wasn't too worried about it. And now we've seen the amount of token generators and cards, other cards that create tokens, other units that create tokens. I don't think that's going to be a problem. So yeah, I think exploit's definitely going to be viable. So you're going to have a way to deal with Gore when he exploits, because he's like exploit like 6 or something ridiculous, right? He's like a 12 cost that you can like. Where was that? I gotta find it, but yeah, I think you're gonna have to be prepared to play against some boss monsters pretty early. I think you're right about that.
And then I suppose on the upside, if that's how it shakes out, then Power of the Dark Side and whatever that other card was become good again. Um, but I kind of, and I realize Chicken Littling, looking at, a partial card pool and not having played the cards ourselves is a little silly. But I do look at these various data points with the token generators and these huge, powerful boss monster cards that we'll be able to play for six. I guess I I don't know if I need to define boss monster. I just mean a bomb, a curve topper, like a game ending card. But instead of having to pay 8 resources or 9 resources to get that thing out, you're packing your deck full of these token generators that don't really do anything, and then you're just feeding them all of these giant things. And then what does that mean for like the middle of the curve? Like, do we kind of collapse and have this meta where it's just the hyper aggro and then the things that can convert that into a creature that's or a unit that's so big that the hyper aggro gets over can't outpace it or whatever? Um, it could be cool, could be interesting. I I don't know. This seems like there's so much going on in this meta. I have a hard time really planting my feet and saying like this is where I think it's going. But I will say that I'm not super excited about the meta I'm describing is one that I hope doesn't happen. I hope we don't end up with all token generators and like exploit top end stuff. I want to see more variety than that. I want the middle of the curve to be able to thrive as well. But these cards, some of them look really good, and I don't know. Uh, I guess it wouldn't be the end of the world if we have like a set where it's this kind of unique situation with only low end and top end index. Uh, but like I think long term, that's not where I would want to be. So hopefully that's not where everything shakes out.
Yeah. So Gore costs 12 with exploit 3, so you can play him for 6. Um, the Hailfire tank costs 8 and has exploit 2, so you can play it for 4. And that's like a 7/8. The card we previewed for FFG is exploit 3 and is an 8/8. It costs 9, so you can, pay 3 to play an 8/8. So yeah, it's gonna be a thing, man.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out.
All right, so last one for me. I gotta find it now. I lost it. I think I'm gonna go off my my theme because this card I think is pretty wild. It is a 4-cost event called Brain Invaders. It's not an event; it's a unit. Sorry, it's a 4-cost unit. Brain Invaders, 2 attack, 4 health. Each leader loses all abilities except for their epic action, and they cannot gain abilities. This is something. This turns off lots of cool stuff. I'm gonna hate to see this this thing in play, but it counters problematic things. What are your thoughts on the Brain Invaders?
Uh, Calling it a counter is probably being a little generous. This is a speed bump. It's a little expensive for a tech card. Like 4 is not the easiest number to sort of weave into your overall game plan. The stats of 2/4 are very killable. I think I would have preferred to see this effect like with a 0 attack stat and then like a huge butt. This is a kill on sight. If you can't deal with this and you have a leader centric deck, you just lose. But frankly, if you can't deal with 4 health on turn 4, or on 4 resources, yeah, you might have lost that game anyway. So I agree with you. This card's super interesting, and what I think is how many Sentinels can I put into a deck where I can get this thing like shielded up, beefed up. Unfortunately he doesn't have a cool keyword like trooper or something where Tarkin could, Voltron this guy and make him huge. Um, if they give us enough cards that you can really protect a guy, this thing could be just the worst. I remember in versus in the first set there was a one drop that basically did this effect and it got banned. Uh, so
Is that Cosmo?
yeah, Cosmo. I mean, it got replaced with a nerfed version of it, but the
Yeah,
original one that just like turned off leaders. I mean, the main characters in
main
that game.
character. Yeah.
This is a strong effect, and for a game that like the tent pool of the gameplay experience is I have this cool leader that is going to affect my game throughout the whole thing. This is the kind of card that makes people flip tables if they can't get to it. If they can't kill this guy, oh man, you're not making friends with this card. But I think it's cool. It's an interesting effect.
This card directly counters every other card in the game, though. I mean, all the problem cards you hear about on Facebook, right? I mean, this just
You got to keep him alive, man, and that's the problem. This dude's super killable,
oh,
and people will freak out. I suspect the role this will play in your deck more than anything else is removal magnet. You run this thing out the play before, the turn before, you want to play the thing that you really care about because this will suck the removal out of your opponent's hand most of the time. People don't like being told their toys don't do what their toys are supposed to do. And that's exactly what this guy's trying to do to them.
so an interesting thought here. You Han 1, right? The one that you play a card from your hand, and then you have to destroy your resource. If you play him, you don't have to destroy the resource, right? Because he just
Do you
lost all
think?
his. Well, he just lost all of his abilities, right? Like if you, yeah,
My guess is the KOing of the resource is a delayed trigger that's resolved at the time of playing the power. I could be wrong without looking it up, but that's my knee jerk reaction is that the resource KOing part of that is like a time bomb that's set at the moment that you use the power. So it's going to go off whether Han's there to see it go off or not. Would but I don't know. We haven't had to deal with this kind of like neutralization power before, so it might if it ends up that your reading of it is correct and we can just use Han. Although who would ever do that for you?
I don't know.
Like, hold
I
on,
don't
wait a
know.
minute. You can't make this happen for yourself. There isn't like a donate card where I can play this guy and then give him to you. So my Han. And if there is, that's a big combo we're talking about now. Um, I am interested to know the answer to that question, even if it will never come up because no opponent will oblige you in that way.
Yeah, um, yeah. You're probably right where it happens probably regardless. But I mean, if it blanks the card,
Trying to see if I happen to have a Han sitting right here. I
I mean,
don't.
it does say at the start of your next action phase, defeat a resource you control. So I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that would be my reading without going to the rules. I feel like if the KOing the resource is baked into the triggering of the power, I think that's there regardless. But I guess we'll appeal to a judge and find out.
yeah. You got any more you want to hit? Any more cards?
No, those are the cards I wanted to talk about. I guess I do have two more cards I want to talk about, but they aren't previews. So, how do I approach this? There have been people on the internet with opinions. Shocking to hear, I know. But the I want to engage with this idea that Boba Fett and Sabine are problematic to the point that they demand errata or ban. And there's a few angles I want to approach this from. First and foremost, there was a post that I saw today that made me want to talk about this more than anything else, and that was this guy going on like a 500 word rant about how you couldn't ever ban these cards because there are showcase versions of them that are worth lots of money. Um, that's ridiculous. That is
Mm-hmm.
just nonsense. The game health always has to take precedence over investors' ROI. And I say that as somebody who likes to buy these game pieces and then turn around and sell them on the internet. Like, I get it. I'm not capricious about the investment angle in these card games. I think that part of the player base actually does matter, and I think they contribute. But at the end of the day, what we want from FFG is to make choices about what's best for the game. And if that means, hey, you can't play this card anymore, and that $300 or $600 showcase suddenly drops in value, well, that's on you. This is a non-essential commodity. Prices are volatile. This is just a thing that happens in card games. So that argument, I just have to like shoot into the ground. That's nonsense. Did you have anything you want to say about that, man?
No, making game balance decisions based on shiny things is that's never. I don't even think that's in the equation.
Yeah, or shouldn't be. So I guess to continue, I also think it's just too soon to be talking about banning cards. Uh, we're not even a year into the game. Yes, we are seeing some events that have some pretty homogenized results. And Boba performing well, Sabine performing well. This has been happening for the whole life of the game. I don't think we should be like cavalier about it. I do think we should pay attention to it, but let's get some more cards in this card pool. I think the bigger criticism that I would have, rather than saying, oh, Boba and Sabine are too good, my issue would be, hey, I don't think the set two leaders shook things up enough. So at least that's where I look at the set two meta. I would have preferred it to be more diverse as well. Uh, but I'd like to give FFG a chance to fix this like over Boba, over Sabine saturation levels by injecting more cards in the card pool rather than deleting some. Even even if I will not stand with the people who say Boba can't be deleted because a showcase exists.
I agree. It's way too early to talk about banning cards, and in my opinion, just because a leader or deck performs well, that or performs better than other decks, that doesn't equal banning, right? That doesn't necessarily mean the game is unhealthy or the balance is unhealthy or the meta is unhealthy. I think people like Boba. I think Boba was already going to be one of the highest played leaders regardless because he's Boba Fett. He is very, very good. He did get a really good upgrade that helped him in set two stay relevant. I think he was going to be relevant in set two regardless of the armor upgrade. There are ways. So I think people are playing Boba Fett because they're comfortable with Boba Fett and his deck, other than adding the armor, and maybe Maul, like, didn't really change much. And it's still good. Like, Boba Green is still good. Boba Yellow is still good. Boba Yellow changed more than Boba Green, I think, because you're more likely to run the Toro, Forlom,
Triple
Zuckuss,
Dark.
Triple Dark Raid, and you can, that stuff is good. And I think Boba Yellow won one PQ. There's been 11 PQs. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So one Sabine PQ win, one Boss Blue PQ win, one Ray Tarkentown PQ win, one Han Yellow PQ win, one Boba Yellow PQ win, one Boba Blue, and then the other 6 are Boba Green.
Well, and to be charitable to the Boba haters out there, just because a deck doesn't win every event, the overall saturation of Boba Fett at events, it is admittedly high. I think that's fair to say. But your point about how Boba was going to be a popular leader regardless because he's a popular character, that plus he's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that applies to Sabine as well. If you're the kind of player who wants to just turn your cards right and just go face, it kind of doesn't get better than Sabine. and we're always going to have an aggro leader that's like the best aggro leader. I think Sabine, I mean, it's good. I'm not saying she's not good, but that deck is super beatable. like,
Yeah.
and it's beatable in the kind of ways that aggro decks should be beatable. You know, you blunt that initial attack, you maybe heal a little bit to survive in the mid game, and then when they're running out of gas, that's when you take over. This is the play pattern we want for dealing with aggro. So just because Sabine happens to be like a great aggro deck, like good, we want good aggro decks in the format, and I just don't. I think this argument makes way more sense with regard to Boba Fett than Sabine, and I still don't agree with it with regard to Boba Fett yet.
Yeah, and I think so many people do. I think a majority of people, especially people newer to competitive scenes, will gravitate towards an aggro playstyle. And Boba Fett really preys on aggro decks. So I think that's why you also see that. It's because, okay, I know like my play group is going to play a bunch of aggro. I'm going to play Boba Fett because it preys on aggro. So I think we're going to see the shift again, just like we did in set 1 with Store Showdown season. It started out really strong Sabine, and then it shifted really strong to Boba Fett, and then by the end we were seeing Iden and Vader and slower control decks that were just going over the top of Boba Fett, and I think we're going to start to see the same thing here. We're seeing Boba Fett really strong at the beginning of this because he preys on aggro, and I think we're going to start to see more Kira. Maybe we'll see more Iden with some more healing come back.
Not
I think,
any units.
yeah, not having any use. We're going to see these. We're going to see these control decks. I think Palpatine is well positioned to deal with Boba Fett. So I think we have even some decks like the Han ECL deck that I did a video for earlier this week. Han 2 with ECL. ECLing Poe or Wrecker deals with Boba Fett with Boba's armor, and it deals with Sabine with the Darksaber. So like there are lots of decks out there. So like you can play a hand disruption deck and try to rip those cards out of their hands. Like there's ways. There's a neutral event confiscate. There's a lot of people's issues I think have to deal with the Darksaber on Sabine and Boba Fett's armor on Boba Fett, because once you get that armor on him, he's very hard to deal with, right? There's probably a dozen different ways you can deal with those. I don't think that those upgrades mean those leaders need banned. I still don't think the game's unhealthy. I think it's overall well balanced, and there's always going to be stuff that rises at the top, and I just think that people are super quick to go ban this, ban this, ban this. I think it's ridiculous. I don't know if some people are like, I can't play the leader I want to play because I can't beat Boba Fett with it. Well, then I think that's probably where some of that comes. Is I don't know. I just think it's ridiculous.
I do think it's probably, if I had to make a tier list, and this happened when we played our tier list game for set 2, I fought real hard to make sure there were no set 2 leaders in S tier. And I do kind of feel like that's the case. I'm not saying set 2 brought a bunch of leaders to the game that are unplayable or that are terrible. I'm not saying that. There's fun stuff in set 2. But set 1 just had more overall power level. And when we're talking about competitive events, I think people are going to gravitate towards what's powerful. The fact that people are more familiar with those cards because they played with them for longer. Maybe some people have established decks and haven't, they're just sliding into what they already have rather than building from scratch. I think there's a lot of reasons that kind of all contribute to a little bit of homogeneity within our competitive meta. But again, I just keep coming back to, well, the solution is let's inject the format with more really cool, exciting leaders that are more powerful, that make people turn away from set 1 because there's a cool new toy rather than slapping their hand away from the toy they've been playing with. Now, there are times in card games where you can't do that, where you do have to actually say, hey, this one needs to be retired. And I think it is valid to observe that Boba Fett's 4/7 stat line for his flip turn feels real strong. So this is something, I'm receptive to these arguments and the observations that people are making. I just don't think we're to the point yet where that case is like strong, much less convincing.
Yeah, I mean the four attack is slightly over over curve, right, for the 5 to play. I mean, nobody's going to argue that, but I just think calling for bans on these cards already,
Too soon.
it's too soon. And I also don't think, like, if the game was super unhealthy and you literally couldn't play anything because of Boba Fett, like, okay, yeah, like I think about the stuff I heard about Thanos in like early versus system. Like, you couldn't play anything else, right? Like, that needed to go because you could not play anything else. And that's not
There
the
was
case
literally
here.
one other deck for, I think it was the second World Championship. It was all Thanos and a smattering of Luke Cage, and none of them made it. Like, I think in the top 8 there was one Luke Cage, and the top 4 was all Thanos, and the final of the court. Yeah, like that would be unhealthy, but that's not what we're seeing.
No. And if you look at the top cuts, it's pretty diverse, right? You'll see like 4, 5, 6 different leaders and decks in the top cuts at these events. It's just in these, I think Boba Fett's getting the good matchups and people are more familiar with Boba Fett. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think overall the game is pretty healthy. Just because you see Boba Fett winning these more of these events than some of these other leaders doesn't mean he needs to be banned.
I think I've exhausted myself on this topic. I
Yeah.
all all of my like, no, 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 you were wrong on Facebook. I have to talk about that energy. I've dissipated it.
Like, I am 100% for banning cards that need to be banned for the health of the game. There's no way we're there yet, and talking about it now is crazy to me.
I get to add one last piece to this. The thing I have heard people say about like, oh well, I don't think cards should be banned because I want to be able to play with my cards. I agree, 100%. And generally, I think I have a 100% track record on this, but I don't know. Maybe I've been wrong in the past. But what I try to look for when I call for a ban on a card in any game is that it's a card that is so out of balance with everything else that it's preventing me from playing the other cards that I have in my collection. There's a whole bunch of cards I can't play because this one thing exists. That's when I want to see it banned. Because by deleting this one thing, it allows all these other things to flourish. Um, Oppressive is the word I tend to use, or suffocating. And Boba Fett just isn't that. So I just want to be clear to the people who are like, well, don't ban anything. Find a solution to the problem. Uh, yes, up to a point.
Hmm.
Once a card is so far out of whack, that card existing prevents me from playing with cards in my collection. And at that point, that's when I want something to go away. So I don't think we're there, but if we ever get there, you'll hear about it for sure because
Hmm.
I'm loud when I think a card's a problem.
All right, you got anything else you want to hit?
No, I think that was it, man.
Any closing? Present your closing arguments at this time.
Support your local stores, go to events, play for your packs, have fun. Don't pressure people to concede at the end of your rounds.
If you're looking for a fun deck, go check out the Han 2 ECL deck overview I put on our YouTube channel. It's a fun deck. Go give it a whirl. I like playing boss monsters, man, and being able to get there faster. It's pretty cool. Go check that out. And that's it. That's all we got. So for Mr. Ben, I'm BananaCrapshoot with Space Arena and Ground Arena, and we'll see you in the arenas.